Hey. Oh, where's my book? Oh. Let's start off with a funny joke. What's the difference between The 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafak and The Will to Keep Going? I actually own this book. Got him. Any Good Book Review is back. I've took basically like a mini break. Didn't edit anything for like almost 2 weeks at this point. The last video took a lot out of me because I'm really not good at kind of like an essay style edit. It's something I'm still getting used to, but I enjoy doing it, but I'm still not good at it. So thank you for your patience. It's taking me so much time to figure it out. Not only have I been working on that video, but I've also been reading a bunch of books. I have read 4 books since my last book review, and I am loving the feeling of being able to finish books after starting them, which I have not been able to do in a very long time. I said it last time, but who knew the secret was actually it's environmentally so bad, but actually buying the book makes it so much nicer to read. I mean, like, oh, that's good. It's the only drug you should do, kids. Reading books. Like I said in the last video, I picked this up on a whim. The 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafak. It was 99p on Kindle. I bought it. I was intrigued, but I couldn't finish it, so I went and bought the physical because I want to add it to my collection. Wow. Now, the prevailing thing I should probably talk about is a fair amount of my religious beliefs kind of coincide with the book, so it may come across that I am incredibly biased, but the way I see it is that your interpretation of how good a book is based on areas of it that you can relate to, and I can relate to a lot of this book just because of the way I was raised. But I'm going to try and do my best to be completely objective. Please keep that in mind when I give it the final score, because I am being as honest as I possibly can. Let's start with it. Discover the 40 Rules of Love. Ella Rubinstein has a husband. Rubinstein. Bernstein Bear Family. Rubinstein has a husband, 3 teenage children, and a pleasant home. Everything that should make her confident and fulfilled, yet there is an emptiness at the heart of Ella's life, an emptiness once filled by love. So when Ella reads a manuscript about the 13th century Sufi poet Rumi and Shams of Tabriz and his 40 rules of life and love, she is shocked out of herself. Turning her back on her family, she embarks on a journey to meet the mysterious author of this work. It is a quest infused with Sufi mysticism and verse, taking Ella and us into an exotic world where faith and love are heartbreakingly explored. It's a good blurb because it tells you stuff like going out to explore love but turning your back on your family. You want to know how the two coincide. It could be very obvious, you know, oh, my family's toxic and I want to run away from them. It's not that, so it kind of subverts that trope, which I thought was wow. The book takes place from the perspective of multiple characters. The primary ones are main character Ella Rubinstein, the famous Sufi poet. You might not have heard of him if you aren't familiar with the historical context, but he's the most famous, I think, today in terms of literature of Middle Eastern poetry. The most famous Middle Eastern poet, his name's Rumi, and Sufi mystic by the name of Shams. And he's from the area of Tabriz, so he's known as Shams of Tabriz. Other notable characters include Kera, who is the wife of Rumi, and Rumi's daughter, Kimya. And the reason why I bring up Kimya specifically is something I'll refer to at the end. The book starts off with Ella unsatisfied with herself in her family life. She has 3 children, I believe it was, 3 children, an older daughter and a set of twins, as well as a mother-in-law, I believe, and her husband. She's against the idea of her eldest daughter getting quickly engaged to a man just because they're in love, and she's made to feel guilty within herself that she believes that, oh, you can't just be in love to get married, what's wrong with you? Thus alienating herself from her children and from her husband. She is under the impression that her husband is having affairs with women when he goes away, and she is complying. She knows that there's nothing that she can do about it because the love from her marriage is gone. Until she is then asked to do an expose on a book called, this was Sweet Blasphemy, wasn't that what it was called? Sweet Blasphemy, the book written by a man called Aziz, called Sweet Blasphemy. She's asked to essentially review it and talk about it, and it's for a like a writer's job that she has, but she ends up being very engrossed in the book. She starts to relate to it heavily, almost as if it was written for her. The book within this book, Sweet Blasphemy, is the story of Shams of Tabriz and his relationship with Rumi, the poet. And this is where I think the book probably draws up a lot of controversy, the unorthodox idea of love that's explored in this book. Usually when people think of love as a concept, it's very romantic. It's the idea of 2 people who are in love with each other. But the book being about Sufi mysticism, which is meant to be a very romantic relation you have with God. You fill your essence with the idea of God, that you are in love with his creation and with God himself. A soulmate in this book isn't explored as a romantic partner that's perfect for you, but the idea of someone who brings out the best in you through your connection with God. Shams of Tabriz and Rumi lived in the early 13th century, and this takes place in the Middle East, so Islam was a very culturally practiced religion at the time. Today it's embraced more as a philosophy and something additional to character, but obviously you have the laws at the time, which it was religion, where religion was essentially law, which there is still a little bit of today, but it's not as much today, basically, which means it was interesting to read this from the perspective of someone who's raised in today's society, and you want to basically transport yourself to a different time with a different line of thinking, but still within the world you have today. It allows you to detach yourself, but without necessarily being in a complete fantasy world. This kind of world did exist at one point, so that was the first good thing that I liked about it. Things like this were done, and it is possible to live the way that these lifestyles are, and I'll get into the lifestyles now actually. You have the clash of characters between Shams and Rumi, even though they're soulmates. Shams is a very much in sync with nature type of character, lives small, doesn't own a lot of possessions. He is drunk off the world that God has made for him. Rumi, who is a big speaker at the time, engages in public speeches, has gotten used to the little bit of fame that he's gathered through that, but he still very much has that connection with God, which is what draws out Shams of Tabriz to him. It's essentially prophesied that the two will become as close as any two people can get in the eyes of God, and the book does such a crazy good job of explaining how it's so good for them, but the world wasn't ready. Even then the world wasn't ready for that kind of relationship where two people are constantly praying, doing the dance of the whirling dervish, engaging in conversation, engaging in writing with each other so often that they both neglect other areas of their life that are social conventions that we perceive as things that shouldn't be broken. Rumi's relationship with his wife is heavily strained because of his relationship with Shams. But at the time, it's hard for anybody to criticize, especially Rumi's wife, to criticize him, because he is getting closer to God, which at the time is what everybody wanted to do. It was something that was a core aspect of all of their lives. But the little resentments come in, and Kara's upset that the family's been destabilized. Rumi's children are very upset with the fact that Rumi's been brought down from how much he's revered in society, because Shams has said to him, stop being so egotistical in front of people. Remember God. Don't let the worldly matters dominate you. And all the while, Ella, in modern day 21st century, is reading that book, and she's stuck in a rut. Her way of life isn't working, and she sees an answer in the way that Shams of Tabriz's stories is working with Rumi, and ever so slowly starts falling in love with the author of Sweet Blasphemy, which is Aziz. Even realizing that a lot of his character traits, Shams of Tabriz, relates to the author, Aziz. She started to think, oh, is he some kind of resurrected form of him or something, which is not the case, but it's the idea that, which is what I have also myself related to in the book, you see yourself in some of the characters, which is what makes a book good for you. You see your flaws in them, and you see through those flaws ways to improve, and it's the best way that books can teach you to better yourself, which is always good. It's perfectly fine to find a book that you like to read just for the entertainment, but for a book that can change the way you think and you're happy with the way it's making you change, it's a special book. There are a couple of things that people won't like about this. Like I said, a very unorthodox take on love. It's alluded to in the book that the love in this book was romantic, and that's the whole point. Like, the people who were living at the time of Rumi in this book were worried that it was romantic, which at the time was something that wasn't tolerated that well. But it's all a moot point, because it's talking about the highest form of love that isn't romantic. Two people who spend so much time with each other, it's got to be romantic love, right? But that's the thing, it's not, and that's what causes the dissent in the family at the time. Ella in the book is just looking for a way to pour that love back into her life, and she ends up not caring how she goes about it, including sending very romantic emails and letters to Aziz, who reciprocates it, and confessing to her husband that she's in love with the author, telling her husband that she's going to go away and essentially have an affair. You have to basically look at this book with an open mind. The book in this book, Sweet Blasphemy, inspired the main character to go have an affair because she wanted that love no matter what. She wanted that connection to God, and she saw it through this romantic feeling she was having for Aziz in the book, which is such a meticulously well thought out sense of self-awareness, at least the way I interpret it, because the book that she's reading doesn't say abandon your family. You're meant to try and better them, or at least try to get them to understand what you're feeling, and not just put everything on hold for that sake. It even compromises religious beliefs. If you're a Muslim like me, you know how we feel about drinking. Shams of Tabriz is a Muslim, and he drinks because he says, I can't get drunk. The only thing I get drunk of is the miracle of God and this world. He doesn't encourage anybody else in the book to drink, but that's just his relationship. So it challenges fundamental beliefs of religions today. It's not even the main point. That's not my point. That's not even the main point. The 40 rules, which there are 42 rules of life and love in this book. They're the things that matter because they eventually bring you a very well written out moral lesson. I know that Shams of Tabriz existed, as did Rumi. I don't know if Shams of Tabriz actually wrote 40 rules. Hold on a second. He's famous for writing the discourse of Shams of Tabriz, according to the Wikipedia page anyway, so a lot of these rules may have existed, even all of them might have existed. I'll have to do more research to find that out. But it serves as essentially like the lifeblood from the book. The story naturally progresses from one rule to the other all the way through to the end, even with Ella quoting the last one herself, which was a really good way to end the book. The rating I'd give for the book is very much in reflection with how much I relate to it, which is not going to be the case for everyone. I've read books since this which have been regarded as the best books of all time. They're considered, definitely in the top 10 of best books of all time, and I didn't like them as much as this book because I think it's all subjective based on what you agree and disagree with and what you're willing to change about yourself in order to say that is a better way of living and I should employ that myself. Ultimately, what it comes down to is that they're in the same way Ella Rubinstein was enamored with Sweet Blasphemy. In this, I just found myself hypnotized by this book. I just wanted to keep reading and I didn't want it to stop. I'm not going to give too much away about the second half of the book because I think it's worth the read and I think everybody should pick it up. It's especially it doesn't matter if you are a Muslim or not. This is a fascinating character study of what the real belief of what love is in Sufism and how it was perceived at the time. How there are aspects of it that you can definitely take and employ as a philosophy today, and you could be very well off. I'm going to reiterate, there are things in this book I definitely don't agree with. One thing I'll quickly note, which is what I said before, was the daughter of Rumi, Kimya. The reason why I'm bringing her up is because she can kind of see into the nether realm. Basically, she can communicate with ghosts in this book, and is what draws her to Rumi as first. She's the adopted daughter of Rumi, is what draws her to him and why she basically lives with him at the time. But she then has her own main story between herself, Rumi, and Shams as well. And I was very intrigued by the character that I did pick up a book written by a completely different author called Rumi's Daughter, which is a book I'm reading right now. You can tell that the whole Sufism and Rumi has had an effect on me because I am very excited to read this book, and already I'm 2 chapters in and it's intrigued me from the get-go. It's one of those books that I didn't think I would end up liking at all, because it just seems so out of nowhere. And maybe that's why I like it so much. I just wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. There are other books that have been hyped to me, so I guess they kind of fall flat on my expectations. I had no expectations for this, which I think helps. It was just 99p, and then obviously £8 for the paperback. The other thing I like about this book is that, and this will be my final point, when it comes to what people say love is, there are people who find themselves I know for a fact, I've been that person firsthand, who they feel they lack the presence of love. Not just within their capability to give love to others, but maybe they just feel like there's not enough love coming towards them. And this book essentially teaches you a way to discover it yourself. You'd have to be very open-minded to do it. It would take a lot of work, and I wouldn't judge anybody for not being able to do it, because the way it's pitched to characters who have to change their ways, it's incredibly hard. But the philosophy is a compelling one. That's what I would say about that. For someone who's trying to come up with answers through the use of styles of life and philosophical thought that would help as he grows older, this book was a revelation to me, and I enjoyed it so much. Is the book any good? Hell yeah. It's 5 stars, mate. No word of a lie. This is a 5-star book for me. I feel like I can't even articulate how much this book is to me. I'm definitely going to read this again in future. There might have been small things, small foreshadowings that I missed out on, and there's a lot of that in here. The book starts off, this isn't really a spoiler because it's right at the beginning, the book starts off with a death and it comes full circle and you can see how he ended up there. The character, Shams of Tabriz, is a very fascinating character. The way he's able to help people in this book with his teachings, and at the same time piss people off as well, which he is described in this book as famous for pissing people off, because he doesn't believe in censoring himself. He says it as it is, because the consequences of how bad your words are don't mean anything to him. The social laws, that have been created by man don't mean anything to him. He just believes in the laws of his God. 5 stars. I'm saying it again. 5 stars. What a book. Read this book. That's book review. Next up that I read, Midnight Library. This came out, I don't know when, 2018? I don't know, not 2018, some other time. I don't care. After reading a book like Replay, this got recommended to me. Similar kind of pitch. It did come out afterwards, and I definitely have some stuff to say about this book and its writing style. So that's going to be the next one. You're right with this style. The channel's called The Psychopath. Yeah, I don't do that much crazy things. I'm trying to get back to like some like non-review form based on content soon, but this stuff is something I'm really passionate about right now, and it's all of the stuff that I can have time for. But I'm going to try and get back into the habit of doing funny type videos. I'm still trying to figure out how funny my videos are. I don't know why I keep doing this. Stop. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Smack up the like button, smack down the subscribe button, and roll credits.